Right, this is the second video in my series. The first one was the respiratory system, and this one is the circulatory system. This one is going to involve the heart and the four chambers of the heart. It's going to link to the lungs, the pulmonary artery and the pulmonary vein. We're going to be talking about other arteries and veins and the capillaries, which link the arteries and the veins and feed, if you like, the individual cells, the blood that contains the oxygen which they got from the lungs, among other things. That's the main thing. So to start with, we're going to have the lungs, which is where we finished last time. I'm going to draw these at the top of the page here, connected to the trachea, not very well. As we know, I'm a really rubbish drawer. And from the lungs, right lung and left lung, we have got the pulmonary vein connecting up to the heart. So this is the only blood vessel in the body which contains oxygenated blood, because the blood has just been to one of the two lungs, and the lungs provide the body with the oxygen that they require. So the first chamber that is going to be entered into here is the left atrium. Now this looks like it's on the right hand side. I'm a right-handed drawer, but it's actually the left side because the page of course has been flipped. Hope that makes sense. The atrium, of which there are going to be two, look like weird little ears when you do the dissection, not like anything major, not like the rest of the heart does, and they're basically just an entrance area for the blood to fill before it feeds into the next part of the heart, which is going to be called the left ventricle. The left ventricle is the biggest, thickest muscled wall of the heart, thickest muscled walls of the heart. So I'm just drawing those nice and thick there. They're the reason why you think your heart is on the left, because the left side of the heart needs to be able to pump the blood all the way around the body, and so it's going to be producing much higher pressure. So it needs to maintain that pressure, therefore it needs to have a much thicker wall to it. I've only drawn half the heart here because this is just half the pump, and I've started to draw in here the little valves. And I'll just colour these in with my purple pen. The purple valves here, which we don't need to name at the moment, prevent the blood from going backwards. So the blood's going to be coming down from the pulmonary artery into the left atrium, where it's just temporarily stored before being pushed into the left ventricle, and then out the left ventricle on a big squeeze, one beat of the heart, and out the aorta, which is the big tube leading out of your heart. Part of it's going to go up to your brain and your arms, and part of it's going to go down to your body. We call it the aortic arch. Just for clarity, I've drawn it over here rather than where it's actually located. So we're just going to deal with the body side today, and we're going to take the aorta, which I'll just label here. Big artery, lots of pressure. We're going to take that aorta down. We're going to feed maybe the big toe or the kidney or the liver or any other organ of the body with the blood, and divides up smaller and smaller from these from the big aorta artery into smaller and smaller arteries, and then into these really fine capillaries, which are going to be feeding individual cells. And I'll come to how those individual cells get fed on my next terrible movie. After the oxygen has diffused across from the blood into those individual cells, the blood continues to flow, and it flows back into veins, which connect up to the vena cava, which is the big vein that services back into the heart. The vena cava is the equivalent of the pulmonary vein. We're going to be going in through the top. Hopefully I can get my picture to match up. And this side, of course, is going to be called the right atrium. Again, a little holding chamber. It looks a bit like the ear. and then the right ventricle underneath. And there are 4, again, little valves to prevent the blood from going backwards, so that the blood, once it's been out, around, through that capillary system, back up. Now it's deoxygenated, it's still red, so I'm still drawing it pink, into the right atrium, that one's coming from the head region there, into the right ventricle, and then it's going to be pumped out. So you can see that each time I'm coming in through the sides and out through the top of the heart. Right, it's going to go back at this stage to the lungs. Both the lungs are going to be serviced, of course, not just one of them, by the blood. And this one here is going to be called the pulmonary artery. So I haven't labelled the vena cava either. Vena cava. Vena cava is just the big vein going into your heart. The pulmonary artery is the only artery in your body that is going to be supplied with deoxygenated blood, even though it's an artery. Arteries usually contain oxygenated blood with the oxygen in it. So you can see here the pathway that the blood is going to be following, and I would expect you to know the names of the ventricles here, the atriums here, the pulmonary vein, the aorta, the little capillaries at the bottom here, the vena cava and the pulmonary artery, and then back to the lungs. Notice that the heart is not really heart-shaped at all, it's more of just a kind of weird blobby shape. And the right side isn't as thick and muscly as the left side, because the right side only has to pump to the lungs. Hope that makes sense. The end.